Hello and you're very welcome to the JMac podcast. I'm John Wan. Of course, this podcast brought to you by merrygoround.com and Atak.ie. It's for JMac podcast to get 15% off on merrygoround.com. Get the best kids go on Atak.ie, be attack minded. I'd say I'm joined by Irish news journalist Cahair O'Kane to talk about all events taking place in GA at the minute, the 2022 Football All Ireland Championship, and all a bit of banter, all a bit of crack. Cahair, how are you keeping?
Good, John. I was just wondering, was that intro in English? You rattled through that at about 200 mile an hour there.
I've said that 100 plus times, man. So I'm sick of probably saying it at this stage.
I thought you'd gone into some foreign language for me there.
No, I've said it too many times, man. I'm sick of saying it.
Good. All things are good. All's good.
All's good. And I suppose you said you're at a Cavan club game there at the weekend. I think it was at Kingscourt were out in action against Gowan. So I suppose you're just getting around to as many club games as you can at the minute.
Trying to get out and see about as much as you can around Ulster and try and take in a bit from as many counties as you can as well and get a feel for them. But no, I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed my day out on Sunday. Maybe I think my expectations were very low during the week because the weather forecast said I was going to get soaked. And then the sun came out and it was a lovely day, and Cahair was a great venue. Lovely stand up there, really, really nice place for a game. And then you sort of think everybody's nice and gentle and grand and the atmosphere is good, and then the ball is thrown in and there's somebody in the crowd going, the first tackle, typical Gowna, and somebody else is roaring at him then.
Yeah, that's Cavan football. That's Cavan football.
It wasn't that pleasant after about 10 seconds. Very physical, but in the best sense, in the sense of it was all between the lines, but it was physical. It was championship football, which with group stages and different formats, and sometimes you don't get that stuff certainly this time of the year. So no, look, I thoroughly enjoyed my day out on Sunday.
I suppose, yeah. So that's, as I was saying to you on Sunday about the kind of standard and quality in Cavan. Obviously, the format up here is you get 4 games, so I suppose you probably get a few bites of the apple. Suppose, what's your kind of thoughts on that kind of format, like in Tyrone, it's straight knockout, and obviously Cavan, you do definitely got a lot of chances. And I was saying to you before, we were just talking off air that maybe teams hold back a bit, and that leads to the quality. I suppose, Cahair, but what would be your take on that?
It's tricky. I suppose in Derry this year we've had a bit of a sham of a system for the last couple of years, really, because we have 4 groups of 4 at senior, but nobody gets eliminated. It's basically used for seeding for the knockout draw. So it's to give. I can understand the rationale behind it. It's to give clubs games with their county men, because our county men played virtually no league football at all this year, barring maybe drips of games that were left over at the very end. But they played no league football at all, really. And so to ask a club to play a straight knockout championship game with their county men, their first game out and possibly the last game out, is tricky. Whereas in Tyrone, it works out different ways, different years, but they have obviously a fairly strict starred system too, where they stick to a certain number of games without county players every year, and they stick rigidly to that, which means the clubs have better access through the year, which means they're not as averse to the straight knockout format. I think that their attitude, there's a massive defense of the straight knockout championship within Tyrone. They love it, and they think it is the only way to go. And when you stand back and you look from the outside, even their first round is a couple of weeks away, and you have Trillick and Dungannon on the Thursday night, you have Dromore and Killyclougher on the Friday night, and you have Carrickmore and Killisland on the Monday night. And those are 3 enormous games. Those are 3, if draws fell right, those are 3 potential county finals. Who's throwing championships open, and the fact that they're straight knockout, it definitely lends itself to the idea that Tyrone is the best championship to watch for neutrals to go and take in. I think, and probably not too many could argue with that.
Yeah, and I suppose what would be your take on, obviously with Cavan, you do get a definitely few chances, but in Tyrone, the way it's like a straight knockout, and at the end of the day, Cahair, all your preparation for the whole year does go into the championship. It's 1 game, and then if you lose it, that's really it. Suppose could there be a need for change, or is it important to kind of stick with that because it's working?
Well, I'm a big fan of straight knockout championship football, to be honest. If it's if it works for a county, if it's feasible, and say Tyrone make it work because of the way they structure their leagues, and they've a quite a good setup there. And I know, look, club players are never fully happy, and there'll be gripes about this and that and the other, but it's not far away. It's not bad. Whereas take the Cavan system, I suppose it can lead to dead rubbers. It can lead to, the idea of this is that it's championship football. It's supposed to be different from league football. It's supposed to have that cut and that age about it, and it's supposed to mean something. And the only way it can mean something for me is if somebody gets knocked out at the end of it. And even, I don't mean necessarily in every game, but certainly go back to the group stage, and the group stage meant nothing at all because nobody gets knocked out. Like, so, that's not really championship at all. Whereas in Cavan, it's probably, well, Cavan is probably saved by the fact that it's so open, and there are a large number of teams that could win the Cavan Championship, and the fact that there was very realistic possibility of Kingscourt or Gown or both going out on Sunday. That sort of that justifies the format, if you like. But if you had a format like Donegal have moved actually to Cavan's format pretty much, and they have 16 teams, 12 go through. And Donegal's top four have been their top four for quite a few years, and there's absolutely no danger of anybody in Donegal getting knocked out before the knockout stages. So theirs is a wee bit like they were very close. I think it was Ian Rua from Ballyshannon. I think now, but I'm not sure of that. But they got a draw at the weekend and stole a point. And otherwise, there were going to be 5 teams at the bottom, all with no points, and one of them was going to qualify without so much as a draw out of 4 games. Like, that's not right. I don't think that's not a championship format for me.
Yeah, I suppose obviously we're kind of talking about now, and obviously the county has been over since July at this stage, Cahair. So what's the take on that now? Obviously the split season, suppose we all can have to get used to it, and if all things were going right, we probably would have a football final now in a few weeks' time. So what's your take been on that?
I think you have to take your lead from the people at the face of it as well. Like, and the players seem overwhelmingly happy with it. Very much funny. I spoke to Patrick Faulkner after the Kingscourt game on Sunday, and he said, he's very happy with it. And everything that you've heard out of players, everything that you've heard out of pretty much county setups, is that they're happy. Now there's the odd manager who would definitely feel it could be pushed back or they could make more time, but that's a natural selfishness, if you like. They're trying to maximize their own thing, and the players are kind of caught in the middle. The clubs are on the other side of it, and ultimately it's for the GA to kind of try and find the balance between the two. And for me, like, I've been beating the drum for a long time. Like, this had to happen. This is the way that it had to go. It's not perfect. I think it will get better. I think clubs haven't probably got the benefit out of it this year that they might have, because their club fixture schedules, it's the first year properly of it, and counties weren't really sure how to deal with it, how to treat it. And what you ended up with, most of the club leagues started around the same time that they would ordinarily start, and it left you either with no county players, as we had in Derry, at all for the leagues, because the leagues were run off very quickly and finished early, or you ended up sort of with a big gap to your championship, or trying to stretch out your league campaign to get a couple of games in. Whatever way, it just didn't work. And I just think that over the next couple of years, counties will learn from this season. They'll push the start of their club leagues back. They'll probably start their club leagues in possibly May time, which would be time enough. And then you run a nice compact 12, 13, 14, whatever number of games you give your clubs in the league. You run it fairly tight, and you run into your championship straight off it, and that's it. That's, for me, that's the way to run the season. Obviously there's dual concerns in different counties as well. You've an enormous, like Antrim, God almighty, like, I don't know how some of those clubs do it. Like, the amount of dual interest that they have, dual players, and they probably get a better games program than maybe anybody else. They tapered it back a wee bit this year, but those boys are football Sunday, hurling Wednesday, football Sunday, hurling Wednesday for months and months and months. And then they get into championship, and like, there was times over the past couple of years when that was the same. That was football championship Sunday, football or hurling championship Wednesday, and they had teams get eliminated in their group stages. Like so, like there's a happy medium, and I just don't think counties have got it right in terms of the club stuff just yet. But I think it will come.
I suppose, yeah. And I suppose, kind of, what is your take on, like, just a pretty general question in terms of, like, the football All Ireland, like last year, the year before, coming up in September. So, have you made peace with that, or are you enjoying the club at the minute?
Sorry, I lost you a second there, John.
Sir, can you hear me there now?
I hear you there now. Sorry.
Sorry, no. It was just a question in terms of, like, if all things were going well compared to last year or the year before, we had like the All Ireland football final now in a few weeks' time. Have you kind of made peace with that, or are you enjoying the club action at the minute?
Oh well, look, I'm a big fan of the All Irelands being where they're at now. I think the All Irelands have to be where they're at now in order for it to work. And all this talk about stretching it out, and we've had various debates on the Sunday game and different places, and there's a massive sort of culture within a lot of the media that, I don't know, is it driven by self-interest, and that it's easier for us, it's easier for me, like it would be a lot easier for me if the county season ran to September, but that doesn't help the clubs, it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't help the GA, I don't think. But there's this massive kind of self-interest and a lot of elements of it, and that pushes the idea that we need to go back to August, we need to go back to September, and we need to stretch out for the promotion and all of this. None of those arguments I particularly buy. The All Ireland finals in July is the only way. I'm working off the top of my head, but if I recall, it's something like 13 or 14 weekends between the All Ireland finals and the provincial club championships starting. And if you have a dual county and you have a round robin system, that's not a lot of time. That is not a lot of time to run off a round robin championship. And people keep saying, we could go back a few weeks and we could go back a few weeks, but we can't. The problem, you go back a few weeks, they had the April club month for a few years there. Like, that was a shambles. That didn't work. County managers were putting enormous pressure on players to not be playing, and the clubs were finding that what you found in a lot of counties was then they didn't play championship. They just played a couple of league games, and then maybe county players didn't play in those, or they played club championship for a couple of rounds, and it was I think there was possibly 2 or 3 rounds, whatever it was, in Tipperary the year before Liam Sheedy came back in. And one of the first things that he said was that, that can't happen again. That was too much for the players in April. We have to cut that back. And he sort of pushed that. Tipperary did cut it back massively the following year, and they won the All Ireland. So there was enormous pressure being put on to not utilise April properly. And that'll never go away. That's in the middle of the inter-county season. Surely it's a break between the league and the championship, but it's still in the middle of the inter-county season. The inter-county managers want access to their players during that period, and it's not a proper solution for me, because the clubs ended up getting nothing out of it, and then the thing, because of it, ran on to late August or early September, mid-September, and then you had no time at the end of the year either. So look, the July All Ireland finals are the way to go for me, without question.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to kind of get up and get on with it at this stage, Cahair, because it's really freeing up time for the clubs, and even gives the county lads a chance to go for a bit of a breakaway or get a few weeks holidays as well. I suppose, what kind of did you make of the opinion of maybe the likes of Rian O'Neill and a few gentlemen going out to States, and a lot of people are kind of saying, no, sure, they're not giving their club the time, bits and pieces like that. But as I said to Brian McCoy earlier on, like, life is for living.
The American thing is a tricky one. It really did come to the fore this year. Obviously, this long running history of fellas going to America for summers, and that's absolutely nothing new. There did seem to be a particularly high number. Maybe it was just more because, maybe there was just more interest and attention on that because the county season was over, and the I suppose fill in the air, if you like. This fella's going to America and that fella's going to America, whereas in past years they would have went on to America and nobody really paid much heed to them. And they just, I don't know whether the numbers were up. I need to check whether the numbers were up or it was just the fact that they were being noticed. They were going to America. But it's something to sort of, it is something to look at, definitely. There's an enormous amount, but then like the vast majority of those fellas are home in good time to actually start into their club championships. Like Cross McGlen play this weekend, is it? Yeah, it's this weekend against Silver Bridge.
Yeah.
On Sunday afternoon. So, they're home in time for their club championship as well. So the idea that they're not giving anything to their club is a wee bit unfair on them. But it's just, again, it goes back to the counties not getting their club schedules right, and there probably was a bit of a lull and a bit of a gap for a lot of fellas when the county season ended. They were looking at, what am I playing here? 4 or 5 club league games, or will I go to America, make a few pound, have a good summer to myself, still come home in time for the championship. Now, granted, like I know from chatting to a few managers, like maybe the shape that some of the fellas come home out of America from, and they maybe weren't in the shape they would want to be in to play championship football, and that has the knock-on impact on the club. But look, you'll never stop players living. You never want to stop players living. Whether there's a big debate over whether there is money being fired around in America and all that sort of stuff, and we don't know for sure money or what money or all of that. But if that was the case, that's possibly an issue. But fellas going to America to play football or going anywhere to do anything, you can't stop them. You won't stop them, and I don't think you should try to stop them, really.
Yeah, I suppose kind of talking a bit in context with that, we have Shane Walsh's transfer obviously to Kilmacud in recent weeks, and he obviously made his debut there on Sunday, and obviously Paul Mannion came on as well. So I suppose what was your take on the Shane Walsh transfer? Like, it did cause a lot of stir, and I suppose obviously his reputation, who he is, hence why. But I suppose what was your take on it all?
To be fair, he's probably a wee bit unfortunate in that he was just coming off for what was, for me, unquestionably the man of the match performance in the All-Ireland final. One of the, like, I've not seen an individual performance like that in an All-Ireland final in front of my own eyes. He was just absolutely sensational that afternoon. Like, it was ridiculous at times what he was doing to Thomas Sullivan, like one of the best man markers, one of the best defenders in the country as well. Like, and like it spoke volumes, the fact that Kerry kept Thomas Sullivan on him because they had nobody better for him. And poor Thomas Sullivan got hung out to dry a wee bit, but I would imagine Jack Connor was looking at it and saying, well, look, Thomas Sullivan's our best defender, our best man marker. If we move him off him, what are we putting on him? So Shane Walsh was maybe a wee bit unfortunate with the timing, but again, look, I wrote a column about it at the time, and I just feel that the idea of the super clubs in Dublin, Kilmacud had 4,800 members. They did not need Shane Walsh, and quite frankly, look, to put not too fine a point on it, it shouldn't be allowed to happen. And that's not from the point of Shane Walsh. That, like, Shane Walsh is the same as everybody else plays Gaelic football. If he wants to move his life to Dublin, he wants to go and live in Dublin. Like, that is, to be fair, that is some spin from Galway to Dublin and back for training. It is, it would break your heart. He said it himself. He did outline his reasons for the body not being as fresh as it was and trying to save himself a bit of time and all that. That's fair enough. He wants to move his life to Dublin. I just don't think that Kilmacud or any of the big clubs in Dublin should be allowed to take in players like that anymore. They don't need them now. And again, in fairness to Kilmacud, the squad that got to the Ireland final this year was entirely homegrown. They have gone away from that. And largely, some of the bigger clubs as well, some of the other bigger clubs have gone the same. There's not as much Holland players in. There's still controversial internal transfers and different things, but there's not the same sort of big name pulled away from rural clubs to those big super clubs in Dublin. But that doesn't change the fact that there shouldn't be any, because quite frankly, you're creating a massive imbalance. Like, look at the All-Ireland Club Championship. Now, I haven't looked at the odds, but I can imagine that Kilmacud are possibly odds-on favourites. Yeah. Like, you're looking at, at the end of the day, Kilcoo did an amazing job to win the All-Ireland, given their resources, given the size of the club and all of that, and the way that the game unfolded. That was their worst performance of the year, and they managed to scrape extra time out of it, and then they managed to scrape a win out of it at the end of extra time. But Kilmacud should have won the All-Ireland. and now they've added Shane Walsh and Paul Mannion's fit again. Like, is anybody else going to win the All-Ireland club this year? They shouldn't. Gil McCudd should win the All-Ireland, and that's just the bottom line. And you're in danger of imbalancing the club game as well a wee bit with Dublin and the strength of their championship. But look, there's a whole wealth of issues around that, and there's not really enough clubs in Dublin, but then there's not enough green space to have enough clubs in Dublin. They can't get facilities, and a club with 4,800 members, and they're not the only ones. There's a few big clubs around there. I just don't think they should be allowed to take players in like that at all.
I suppose, could this kind of open up now the floodgates? Because obviously we have seen transfers in the past for the right and the wrong of the GAA, but Shane Walsh's situation, he's kind of referenced the fact to prolong his GAA career and bits like that, and obviously everything is up in Dublin, work and bits and pieces, but could the floodgates open up after this, Cahair?
It's a tricky. What potentially opens the floodgates on it is the fact is his kind of student status, that he's a third level student, and the GAA's rules sort of state that that's not classed as permanent residence. Not quite sure how they got around that. I was kind of expecting the transfer to be turned down on those grounds. So, and I suppose for rural clubs, I know particularly in the north where everybody migrates to Belfast largely for university, and for sort of west of the Ban, ourselves, Tyrone, particularly, it's a long spin home. There'll be a lot of fellas maybe looking at it and saying, I'll just transfer up and play for St Enders, or I'll play for St Bridget's, or I'll play for Lavjarg, or I'll play for whoever in Belfast, St John's, or whoever. And I'm not saying that will happen, but that's the danger of kind of giving a wee bit of leeway on that. Look, there'll always be fellas going to work in Dublin, but again, there's the housing problem in Dublin as well. There's loads of fellas still going to work in Dublin, but there's fellas driving up and down in vans every day. There's a lot of the young professionals are maybe looking work in Dublin, but having to live in Meath or Kildare or Westmeath and even commute in from there because the lack of availability and the affordability of housing in Dublin. It's absolutely scandalous stuff going on down there, that road. So I don't know that we'll see a massive, I don't think it'll open any floodgates. I think things will tick along much as they were, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. But obviously, it definitely caught the eye of the nation, especially, I suppose, the timing off as well, pretty much straight after the All-Ireland final. I suppose, talk about the All-Ireland final of the 2022 football season, Cahair. Overall, were you impressed by it? Obviously, Kerry coming out on top in the eventual winners.
Aye. Kerry were due in All-Ireland, and they felt that they probably left one behind last year in the semi-final against Tyrone, and the concession of the goals and the couple of things that went wrong and all that, and the COVID stuff, and it did feel from early on that it was Kerry's to lose, but I was never fully convinced by them, and I really genuinely felt that Galway had a serious chance in that final, because they would have been able to play on some of Kerry's flaws. Now, the one that I was disappointed that they didn't play on, in the sense of they manufactured it so well. And maybe people didn't notice on TV, but being there at the game, like Kerry had obviously playing Tadhg Morley as the sweeper all year, and he'd done brilliantly in that role. And the way the Galway played in the first half, they actually forced Tadhg Morley out of that position. Kerry had no sweeper for the first half. And Damien Comer was one-on-one with Jason Foley, and they never, whether partly his movement and Foley's good positioning, to be fair, but also they never tested that. And I was disappointed that Galway never tested that. That was one-on-one for the whole of the first half, and they serviced Comer with nothing, and just felt that there were goals there potentially. And once Kerry got their houses in order at half-time, you kind of did feel that they would win it once they got the thing nailed down a wee bit. But look, they were the best team in Ireland this year, and the danger now is that their age profile suggests that they could conceivably do something close to what Dublin have done over the last 10 years. I don't think they'll win 6 in a row, partly because outside of the late 70s and early 80s, that hasn't been Kerry's way. They tend to win them in smaller sports than that. They could win 6 or 7 out of 10 All Irelands, but they'd win them in 3-2s rather than a 6, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's kind of been their way. So I don't think there'll be the dominance of football from them, but they're definitely going to be the team that if you're going to win an All Ireland, you're going to have to beat them for the next 10 years, I think.
I suppose obviously it's great to see as well, Cahair, that the gap really has closed. Obviously Dublin have very much come back to the pack, and obviously the likes of Derry and Armagh, Galway really kind of come up to the ranks, and definitely from an Ulster side, it's very positive. So it's great to see the gap closing up so much.
Look, it is. It was good. I suppose I think that was one of the big attractions of this year's All Ireland series was the freshness of it. The fact that Armagh were there, right from the All Ireland quarter final draw from that morning. Funny, I was away. Me and the wife and the Waynes were away for a couple of days before the All Ireland quarter final draw was made, and Derry had just won Ulster, and we were coming up the road, and I said to Maria, I was like, there's a fair chance the way this thing is sitting that this draw could be lopsided. I'm going to go and book a hotel here for Dublin for the All Ireland final, and we'll take a chance and we'll book a free cancellation share and we'll see how it turns out. And then, of course, turned out in the Monday morning, Derry, Clare, Galway, Armagh. And it seemed that exploded the All Ireland series into life because some of those 4 was going to be in an All Ireland final. Mm-hmm. And it created such enormous excitement in those counties. Mm-hmm. And then you obviously had the other side where you had Mayo, Kerry and Dublin looking at each other, and you did feel like Kerry would come out of it, though I still maintain had Ryan O'Donoghue been fit, that Mayo would have given them their absolute fill of it in the quarter final, and they did for 45-50 minutes, but they just didn't have the capacity up front to keep on troubling, and Kerry got away comfortably enough in the end. But for the next few years, you're looking at, I think Mayo are very much there, and funny, me and a cousin have a running joke, a kind of a running bet where we do Mayo every year. Don't know, many years now we've done Mayo, like, but
you must be bankrupt, Cahair. You must be bankrupt.
broke, but Mayo are going to win it someday, O'Donoghue was a massive loss in that All Ireland quarter final. Tommy Conroy, provided he's come over his injury well and gets himself back. He, in one sense, it happened at the time of year where he has a good lead in now to next year's championship. He should get plenty of football by the time they're really hitting the ground next summer. Massive addition to that team. Different, maybe a wee bit of freshness around the sideline as well. Mayo are definitely in the mix. Dublin are definitely in the mix. Galway should stay around the mix because they probably impressed me more than anybody this year, in the sense of, I'll be totally honest, I've never been 100% convinced by Pádraig Joyce in terms of the tactical side of it and whether they got things right on the big games. But I thought this year they absolutely nailed it every game. The playing the double sweepers against Mayo and Castlebar, Mayo didn't know what to do. They were shooting from sidelines, shooting from 45, shooting from everywhere because they couldn't get inside. And from then on, Galway got their tactics right every single time they went out this year. Right up to the final, they got their tactics right in the final too. Just didn't come off. And so they should stay around. Derry probably have to find a real scoring forward, and we're not quite sure where that scoring forward is at in the club game. We don't know where he's coming from, but they have to move their game on a wee bit. But then there's big similarities between Derry this year and Donegal in 2011, and then Donegal, and obviously Rory Gallagher's involvement in that. Donegal came and moved it on in the attacking sense the following year, and I suppose it's maybe the hope in Derry that same kind of progression. But obviously that Donegal team had Colin McFadden, Michael Murphy, Paddy McBrearty, ball winning forwards, and we just don't have ball winning forwards at the minute. So we maybe just have to find a wee bit extra up front. But no, it's opened up, and then Armagh, of course, like Armagh thrilled everybody. Still, the capacity to implode the way they did in the first half against Donegal and Ballybofey, and then the capacity to be brilliant the way they were from 25 minutes on against Donegal in the qualifier. So you never quite know with Armagh, but they're definitely look. There's a lot of teams just right on the edge of the mix, but Cahair in front.
Yeah, I suppose obviously the year Derry had, obviously you would have been very impressed. Obviously, lifting the Ulster title after all them years, and Rory Gallagher just looks like he's doing unbelievable work with them. I know obviously their season just came up short against I suppose a fairly inspired Galway team. So were you happy with Derry's year as a whole?
I mean, after 24 years, if you had offered any Derry supporter at the start of this year an Ulster title and an All Ireland semi-final, they would have took the arm off you that quick. You wouldn't even have felt it going. Like it was so far off the radar. And to be fair, like obviously Rory Gallagher's done a brilliant job, and Kieran Mina and Enda Muldoon along with him, and that's, I suppose, particularly Rory Gallagher's I was going to say phenomenal, freakish football brain. But to be fair, Kieran Mina as well is not much different, and the two of them together, and then Enda Muldoon as well, who's just a superstar in Derry. So it's been a great setup there. The players have really, really bought in. They took them a wee while to get used to it, to adjust to what he was asking of them. And there was a few clear outs in the panel and a few fellas brought in until Rory got the players that he felt were right. And then the thing kind of took off. And look, they were looking at this. They were looking at Ulster from the start. But look, the draw, going to Tyrone, up to Healy Park against the All Ireland champions in the first game, then Monahan, and then Donegal. It's one of the best Ulster titles that has ever been won. In that sense, it's one of the toughest that's ever been won, considering where Derry came from and playing Division 2 football as well. And but it just, it's funny, like the Tyrone game, there wouldn't have been more than a couple of thousand Derry fans at it, even though the league had been decent, and even though you sort of thought they'd do all right, there wasn't the belief or the fervour about it, and I think like our own club had something like half a dozen tickets for the Tyrone game, and then I can't remember now, but it was 20 odd for the Monahan game, and then it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds for the Donegal game. We had more tickets sold for the Donegal game than we had people. So the hype and the thing exploded after the Tyrone game, and the county went mad. The Monahan game was a brilliant experience up in Armagh, where the Derry fans did match and outnumber the Monahan fans, and then it was 3-1 in Clonus for the Donegal game, and like Derry are traditionally poorly supported, don't have those numbers ordinarily, and it was an absolute sea of red and white in Clonus that day. Like you couldn't find any green and gold if you looked for it. And the whole county just went a bit bananas for it. Like the Neil's shop in Marfelt, you could not buy a Derry jersey for love nor money. They were just eternally sold out of them. Like, and it was great, and Derry is a county that's long been in love with football, but it hasn't been in love with this county team for a long time. And there's been a sort of a funny relationship there, but just those couple of wins really set the thing off, and now it feels like, we'll see how the bandwagon sticks it next year. Like, but there's definitely a different sense about the county team in Derry.
Yeah, it looks unreal now at the minute. And I suppose obviously Rory Gallagher, Cahair, obviously just an infectious man. In fairness, his passion for GAA football, absolutely everything is unbelievable, really. What is it about him?
The brain and the intensity that he brings, and he has such a knowledge of football and such a knowledge of other teams, and he has, he obviously knows a lot of people, and he knows a lot about it, and then the energy, brain is one thing, but I think a lot of the players and that would go back to the energy that he brings to the training field and brings to the training every single night they go out. Like, they just don't be flat at training sessions. They're not allowed to be flat. Like, and he he kind of prides himself on maintaining that energy every single night. They go to Owenbeg, and it's helter skelter, and it's upbeat, and it's noisy, and it's all those things that you associate with a good training session, and it just creates a buzz, it creates a momentum, it creates a belief among the players, and like he to be fair, he probably went the opposite way from a lot of managers would have done over the past 2.5 years, particularly, like where most of the vast majority of managers would play down their team and we'll see how it goes, or we'll take it game by game. And Rory Gallagher would have been made no bones about saying, look, we want to win an Ulster title. We're coming for an Ulster title. We feel that we're good enough to go to Healy Park and win. We're good enough to beat Monahan. We're good enough to beat Donegal. He would have openly kind of said these things, and it put public confidence in the whole thing, and it was kind of, I say, not the ordinary way that you would see a manager approach that kind of, particularly the media side of things, like. But he made no bones about it that what Derry were there for and what they intended to do, and that was, I just think the confidence and the momentum that they built, it just took off like a snowball. I say, particularly then when they weren't really fancied. I personally, like, I felt they were going to give Tyrone a serious game in Oma, but I thought they would just fall a wee bit short on it. But they went up and they were so tuned in, and they were so tactically spot on that day, and they were so dominant. Tyrone didn't really know what to do, lost the heads, got men sent off, didn't, and obviously, as we know, Tyrone's season wasn't going well and didn't go well. But it that game really, really sparked the whole thing, where you thought, like, you just went to the home of the All-Ireland champions and you beat them by 10. You didn't just beat them, you beat them by 10 points. And, that kind of everything went from there.
Yeah, I suppose obviously with Derry, like, and obviously you're following them all your life, Carol. Like, what's the big difference, say, like this year and even last year with Rory, like, and compared to maybe managers of the past? Like, and obviously the players have been there for Derry, but now we're really seeing the quality within them. Like, so what do you think maybe has been the difference from years gone by to now?
Oh, they would tell you themselves that the difference is literally the level that they're now at in terms of their work and their preparation on it. Like, I suppose Rory Gallagher had been around county football for a long time. He'd been around coaching for a long time. He'd been involved with a team that won an All-Ireland, heavily involved in it. Key part of it. And he knew what it took to bring a team to that level. And I suppose that particularly, he was the ideal man in the sense of Donegal came from nowhere in 2011. It wasn't like him and Jim McGuinness inherited a team that was knocking on the door. They were absolutely nowhere when they took them over. So he had been involved in building the team up from nowhere. So the fellas kind of, it took a wee while to adjust because of the demands. Like, I mean, you'd have heard stories of different things, and just the sheer volume of time and the sheer amount of time that those players were spending in Owenbeg together, training and doing video sessions and doing their analysis and doing all the rest of it. And they just put in an enormous time, and that was backed up by great work in terms of their conditioning too. They went to a completely different level physically. There was people talking about them. I felt they were in the bracket, like, but there was people talking about them as the fittest team in Ireland when they were looking at them playing in Ulster, like, because of the way that their running game was so effective, and they were so hard working, and like, to go from where they had been to being in that conversation was in a relatively short space of time. Peter Hughes from Tyrone came in as the strength and conditioning man a couple of years ago, and obviously Rory's own knowledge of that side of it too, and they found a new level. And basically, Derry started to prepare and train like a team that was going to win Ulster titles and be competing for All Irelands, and I think they're a great barometer and a great example to other counties. I think if other counties look at Derry, because everybody can, we're full of excuses like Dublin have all that money and Kerry have all those footballers and all the rest of it, and we can't compete with that. And I think Derry found out that, you really put your shoulder to the wheel, you can do it. You can be in that conversation. And look, there's obviously tactical elements and different things and quality and all the rest of it, but sheer hard work, just sheer hard work and building a wee bit of belief that they had in themselves by the end of it.
Yeah, I suppose. And like, would you be getting off the opinion, like a few changes here and there, maybe a switch of mentality, get lads organised, get lads tuned in, and obviously no better man than Rory Gallagher to come in and do that?
That's it. I suppose that sounds simple, and there's an enormous skill in what Rory Gallagher has done. Like, it's one thing, like the belief thing, and sure, look, everybody's been around changing rooms, and you hear the belief thing, and we have no belief, or you just need a bit of belief, lads. A manager telling you need belief, like, but look, you only get belief from what you do on the training ground. Belief is knowing that it is inside you, and you cannot fake that. Like, because when it comes to it, you either have it or you don't. Like, belief, Derry had enormous belief in themselves because of the work that they put in. They knew in their hearts that they had done as much work as any other team in Ireland, and they knew they were as fit as any other team in Ireland. And you can stand and a manager can tell you to believe in yourself, but if a team has done 2 extra training sessions a week that you haven't done, after 35 minutes, somebody telling you to believe, it just falls by the wayside. Like, you just can't do it. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like, they had belief because of what they had done. It wasn't empty. There was no emptiness to the belief that they built for themselves.
I suppose the last question on Derry, Cahair, like, what's the ceiling even for these lads, even next year and the year after? Like, do you feel it can go back to back? Like, it'll be very tough, obviously, with other teams and Ulster, likes of Armagh, Monahan, Donegal, Tyrone, kind of still being there. Cahair, like, what do you feel the ceiling is for this Derry team?
Well, ever winning back-to-back Ulster titles is very, very hard for any county. I think off the Derry won in 76 and 77. Off the top of my head, that's the only time Derry's ever done back-to-back Ulster titles. Look, Donegal have had a particularly good record and a good run in Ulster over the last 12 years, 10 Ulster finals in 12 years, but they still only won 5 of them. It is, Tyrone found in their All-Ireland winning years that putting back-to-back Ulsters wasn't that handy. Even Armagh had a better record in Ulster than Tyrone did at that time. But it's not easy, and as you say, like, you would expect that Tyrone will come back with a wee bit of fire in their belly. You'd expect that the age profile of Armagh, they have nobody in danger of being away. They should improve again. Monahan really have to get themselves sorted out and have no manager at the minute, and that's threatening to overwhelm them a wee bit. But obviously Donegal, like, I believe Donegal are a similar boat. No manager and no prospect of an appointment looking like in the next few days either, but no obvious candidate. But like, the age profile of Donegal outside of Murphy and McFadden, and you can say Murphy, what are they without him? I suppose we won't know, but the age profile of that Donegal team, I still believe it with the right man. There's more in that Donegal team, definitely, without question. But they have to find that in themselves. So, and to be fair, like, Gavin are deserve to be in that conversation. Like, they were unlucky to not get the better of Donegal. Like, that the goal came when it came, and the manner that it came off an out high ball, it just fell beautifully for Jamie Brennan at his feet. Like, and like, had that ball not fallen the way it did, like, Gavin could very, very well have beaten Donegal that day, and obviously won Ulster in 2020. They physically, and that's something that's understated about that Gavin team. Like, physically, nobody likes playing them. I know that there are teams who have gone out against them and have been shocked by the physical size and the conditioning of them. Like, and I suppose that comes from maybe playing in Division 4 and Division 3 and maybe people not just taking you as seriously as they should. And Cavan are definitely in that conversation as well. So like, there's back-to-back Ulsters is not that handy done. Where's Derry's ceiling? Well, I say they have to develop the attacking side of the game now. The defensive side was very, very good this year. The counter-attacking platforms that they built were very good, but they just found that particularly when the game just started to get away from them a wee bit against Galway, they didn't have the materials to rip it back. They weren't built for chasing a game from 6 points down, and you kind of could sense that in the ground that the air kind of went out of it quite quickly because we didn't really have anybody to put inside and drive a ball at, or we didn't have anything to kind of do differently. There was a plan A, if you like, and we're so good at plan A, but when plan A then did break down, just plan B hasn't developed yet. And I suppose that's where it's at. They have to get plan B on the go, start mixing it up a wee bit, and then look, ability wise and all that, and age profile again is good, very good, and there's more coming behind it. So the ceiling's not broke. I would say the ceiling's definitely not broke for them.
Absolutely, and obviously in recent weeks as well, Cahair, we've a bit of a managerial merry-go-round. We've obviously Kevin McStay is going with Mayo, Paddy Christie's gone in with Longford, Liam Cairns with Offaly, Andy McEntee with Antrim, Bailey Lee has obviously left Limerick, Jack Cooney left Westmeath, Monahan Donegal still on the lookout, Colin O'Rourke's gone in with Meath, and Ian McCallan's gone in with the Carlow backroom team, and Oisin McConville's took the Wicklow job in recent days. Suppose any of that stand out to you, Cahair?
I suppose that obviously the most high profile, the one that got the most conversation was Mayo, and the kind of, to be fair, like it would be something in Mayo there's a serious gripe over that the previous appointments maybe haven't been handled all that well, and they haven't covered themselves in glory, and they had four candidates and fairly strong management teams in the frame this time, but they seem to deal with the process better on this occasion. They seem to get their business done fairly well, and for me, looking at it on paper, I think they picked the right management team, and that goes back to Kevin McStay on his own merit, having obviously managed the Bridges to an All-Ireland club and managed Roscommon in recent times. Has his own wealth of experience there, but also the team that he put around him looked the strongest on paper. Stephen Rochford, previous Mayo manager, and obviously he's been Donegal now for a few years and very, very experienced. And then Donny Buckley, who's been around the houses and obviously, very, very highly thought of in Mayo in terms of what he did with some of the best defenders that we have seen of the last generation, some of the best one-to-one man markers, and that was the reason why Mayo were able to go toe-to-toe with Dublin, because they could leave themselves one-on-one when they had to, and they could hold their own and fight those battles. And that, Donny Buckley's work on their tackling and their defensive skills was renowned at that time. So, I think the Mayo players will be very happy with that management team, and that's not an easy thing to get right. Players can be hard enough to please, and understandably so, and the time and the effort and the expense that they put into it sometimes. So that's the one that definitely stands out for me. And I think they've got it right. And I just go back. It'll be very interesting. Mayo. There's definitely a big kick left in Mayo for me, no doubt.
Yeah, and I suppose obviously, are you surprised with Monahan and Donegal? Obviously, we touched on obviously Jason Sherlock and Ger Brennan was hotly linked with the Monahan job, and obviously Rory Gallagher was hotly linked with the Donegal job, but none of them has transpired, I suppose, Cahair. So are you surprised maybe by the urgency or what's going on there?
Yeah, they've turned into difficult processes for both counties, particularly Monahan. Theirs has been a wee bit messy. Sherlock stuff started about must be 6 weeks ago now. The talk that at that stage the reports were that it's sort of a matter of nailing down the bits and pieces, and he was going to be appointed, and then have been very quiet for a number of weeks, and then the thing they went through the interview process, and Jason Sherlock and Brendan Hackett both went for interviews and then pulled out subsequently. Mark Coonan was interviewed and then told he wasn't getting the job, and they've left themselves. Then they went to Ger Brennan. He pulled the pin after they'd spoken to them and seemed to be fairly close, and then he backed away, and genuinely not really sure where they're going to turn now. There's talk of sort of kicked up again in the last couple of days of maybe a local management team, an inside management team of Monahan men, but nothing concrete in that at all either. So not really clear where they're going or what they're going to end up with there, because it's getting late. It's the 6th of September. That's late. That's late for a county that I think it was the 29th of June, if I recall correctly. Banty stepped down, and it's quite a while. That's a long time. So Donegal, similar enough in that, but I suppose Monahan at least had Sherlock and Ger Brennan and Brendan Hackett and Mark Coonan to throw at it. Donegal, the interest is so scant and so surprising. The chat is coming back round to Martin McHugh again. He had been rumoured at the start, and then that all went very quiet. And then I suppose they put their eggs in the Malachy O'Rourke basket. They wanted Malachy O'Rourke. They made a play for him, and he turned it down, and that left them sort of they don't really know where to go. Only McHugh and Sean Paul Barrett, who was the under-20 manager a couple of years ago, have been nominated. Don't really know where that's going to end up either. I say that the talk has come back around to Mark McHugh again in the last couple of days, but even gauging his own interest in it, not convinced that he actually even wants to be the Donegal manager. So it's a really bad position, to be fair, for both counties to be in that, even the down thing last year where they left it very late. They didn't want to impinge on Conor Laverty's involvement with Kilcoo in the Down Championship, and then when Kilcoo won down, then they went after the Kilcoo or the ticket of Conor Laverty and Murray Clark and Jim McGuinness, which there'd been bits of conversations and discussions around, but it was left until the Down Championship was completed, and then they tried to get that all nailed down, and it fell apart. Mm-hmm. And they ended up sort of James McGarry stepping in to basically pull them out by the end of the year. But at least when Down waited, they knew what they were waiting on. Donegal and Monahan are the 6th of September, and they have no idea what they're waiting on. No idea where they're heading with this. And that's a really tricky position for both counties to be in, and not a good position. And it'd be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, does it boil back to the time that goes into it? Obviously, intercounty management is a full-time job at the end of the day, Cahair. So does it just boil down to just men not just being fit to commit? I know Donegal, geographically is probably not ideal for a lot of people, but what you feel it boils down to?
Well, the geographical thing is definitely a point. In Donegal don't tend to have many outside managers or no real discernible history of outside men at all. So, and that is definitely a factor in that. They do struggle to attract people to some drive up the convoy from from parts of Donegal. It's some drive. It's internally, it's a big commitment. Never mind externally. So it's a big county geographically. But they're just look. Declan Bonner, I think it was himself, said he reckoned between 50 and 60 hours a week managers were putting into it last year. He said, and that's probably at the very top end of it, but certainly 30 at least, and it is becoming a full-time job. And you're looking at people having to take year out, time out. I did a podcast last week with Brenton Devaney, and he just said he'd been talking. He'd just been talking to Enda McGinley, and McGinley had said, if he was ever going to take a county team again, he'd have to take a career break. There'd be no way that he could do it. And obviously, you Paddy Tally now. In fairness, he's going from County Tyrone to Kerry for training, but he obviously took the year out from his job in St Mary's to commit to that. And the time commitment is, to be fair, absolutely enormous. And I just wonder where we're going with it, because it's like playing. I believe that the playing thing has become very close to unsustainable itself. The management thing is no different. Getting, the only thing is, I suppose, what expenses they're getting and different things. Whether they're, you're basically looking at, if you wanted to take a county team, you'd be looking at a county board to basically cover your wage, to step away from work, and for the county board to cover your wage, which again is sort of against the ethos of it. But just the time commitment. I don't know where we're going to get future managers, particularly when you do see, avenues and paths being closed off to, different managers, in terms of, feels as though the pool is shallow, and yet there's no pathway for coaches. Basically, look, you have to have been a very successful footballer yourself a lot of the time, and it seems that no matter what you do as a coach, your reputation will always be preceded by what you did as a footballer. And that's rightly or wrongly. There are some coaches who definitely wouldn't be up to intercounty football, and maybe done all right in club things and that, but it just feels like the lack of pathway, lack of opportunity for coaches outside of and big names, and sometimes like big names who maybe don't merit county jobs with their names. I just think that's something maybe the GA needs to be wary of, and maybe do more. I know they have their level 2 coaching certificate and stuff, but a clear pathway for coaches, such as your soccer, your UEFA A license and your B license, and you have to have your A license in order to coach at a certain level or to manage at a certain level. I think going down that way would be no harm, because it levels and balances the playing field. It allows coaches from outside that elite conversation, if you like, to prove themselves and to maybe force themselves into the conversation. Because otherwise we're going to run out of county managers, if nothing else.
Obviously, Billy Lee saying in the off the ball interview that I suppose it was a time commitment and obviously family as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the future holds in regards to that. Karen, I suppose the last question: do you feel the game's in a good place at the minute?
It's a funny one. It's on the cliff of a good position. I suppose I've been saying this for a wee while, but I never have bought the idea. In fact, I'd buy the complete opposite, the idea that the modern footballers aren't as good, or aren't as, like, footballers now are far superior to what's ever been, and there's absolutely no question about that. Like, you look at, there's Thomas Sullivan, a man marker who could easily score 1-2 in a game from corner back, and and that's not necessarily fisting the ball over a bar. Thomas Sullivan can kick you a point from 45 yards. Funny, I was talking to a man who reminded me that the same Thomas Sullivan started a Hogan Cup final for Corkadina at corner back, and when things were getting a wee bit tight up front, they changed him and played him at corner forward in the second half, and he was brilliant in the second half as well. The interchangeability and the ability of modern footballers is off the scale, but I just feel that the game is very tactical, and we're trying to find ways, and the more conversation you have and you look at ways, and we all do it, like, what do we do about the mark, and the mark being the prime example. Like, I don't like the mark at all, really. I think it gives away a lot of soft scores and dud scores, but kicking of the ball has increased by 20% since the mark was put in. Okay. So, is it a necessary evil? But then you go through all these rules, and do we limit hand passing, and we do this and we do that, and I think maybe we're at the stage where we're just looking right past the thing that's staring us in the face, is 13-a-side football. Where the space is going to be naturally there for forwards where we kick the ball again. because teams have become so good at closing off the space. And I just think if you go to 13, funny, we've had for a long number of years in Derry, we had a competition, a club competition, the Dr. Carlin Cup, and it was played 13 aside, and it was a North Derry competition, and we would have played in it ourselves, like, and the crowd, it used to, Claudia Club ran it, and the crowd that used to come to the final, there were thousands at the final, Claudia, and the games were always, I remember some of the best games I ever played were in the Dr. Carlin Cup. You were 4-13 to 2-17 and nonsense like that you would never ever have got in the league game. And like the 13 aside thing, it made a massive difference. And I just think that we've become so tactically constricted that we're getting enormous passages in games of the ball being passed laterally back and forward across, and
it's a killer.
Trying to work a gap for a runner to go inside the 45 and win a free, and then the thing resets and the kick out comes, and they do the same at the other end. And like I watch football all day. Like I love watching football, and I would still watch it no matter what it looks like. But I just feel that for a lot of the supporters and a lot of people that you're trying to keep at it, I just feel it's not a very attractive game a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I think we could do more to help that. The other idea that's often fired at is shot clock. Maybe that would help. I've actually come round. Maybe I would have felt for a long time that wouldn't help, because it would encourage teams to just get straight back and stop this, whatever 30, 40, 50 seconds, whatever it is, the team has to work a shot.
Yeah.
You would just get everybody behind the ball for those 50 seconds, stop the other team getting the shot away. But then you think of the counter, like when you're in possession, if you want to maximize it, it would encourage you to get the ball forward a bit faster. Otherwise, you're not going to get your shot away. So possibly worth looking at, but harder to police. I just think that certainly on a trial, why not? Like, it's the most harmless trial you can do in terms of we're not messing with the rules. Every rule change we make, and managers hate them, and everybody, we don't like the marker, we don't like this, we don't like boys being allowed to lift the ball off the ground, let's scrap that again. Take a National League campaign and go 13 aside, see what it does for the game. And sure, if it doesn't work, there's no drastic alteration needed to do it. There's no drastic alteration needed to change it back at the end of the league. It's a very, very simple change, the most simple change, and it's the change that's maybe the most worth looking at. Because if football got freed up, and if there was a wee bit more speed in the way that the ball moves up the pitch, and a wee bit more directness in it, like, it has enormous potential, because it is very close. Some of the stuff is absolutely off the scale, brilliant, but it's just been held back by the way that it is at the minute.
I agree with all that. And I suppose probably a rhetorical question, but what players are exciting you at the minute?
Well, sure. Look, the boy wonder down the road there, Clifford, is the man. Like, he's just an absolute superstar at Gaelic football. I don't know, it's ridiculous football, really. Like, I know you can't say that he's the greatest ever, because he's far too young for a start, and you don't know what'll happen for the rest of his career. But certainly at this stage, you're looking at his scoring rate, and I remember looking at it last year, and obviously Killian O'Connor's the top scorer in championship history, and I suppose Killian maybe doesn't get the regard that he deserves sometime. Definitely not. But you look at almost all of the top scorers, and their ratio of scores from frees to play is about 70% frees, 30% from play. David Clifford's the exact opposite. He's going 30% frees, 70% from play, and he's keeping tabs on some of the fellas that if that doesn't tell you that we've never seen anything like him, that's where he's at. Like, and he's just, it's class watching him. It is, and God love any defender going in. You're just thinking, if I can keep this fella to 1-4, you're kind of doing well, like, because he's a phenomenon. And I suppose it was one of the best things. It was one of the very, very best things about the GA this year in that it was relaxed during the National League in terms of pitch invasions after games. Every game, particularly in Division 1, where the big stars are playing, every single game, the final whistle, the pitch got flooded with young fellas, young
But
gears.
that's what we've been crying out for.
Oh, and it was the best thing because, and to be fair to the players, like I'm sure February, March, you're standing there, you're freezing, you want to get off, you have 4-hour bus journey in front of you, like you want to get home, and the players would have stood, and Clifford and was one example, but there were loads and loads of players that would have stood and stood and stood and got photos taken and signed jerseys and signed balls and signed everything, and the connection that had been getting a wee bit lost. There was a wee bit of a loss of the connection, and partly due to the banning of the pitch invasions around Croke Park and stuff, and round Ulster finals and different things, and it just brought that connection back, and it just felt like it engaged young people in a way that they maybe weren't getting. And like I know myself, like the floods and floods of young people onto the pitch after Derry games now and getting their jerseys signed by Shane McGuigan and Gareth McKinless and Conor Glass and Chrissy McCaig and all the rest of them. And I just think it was one of the best things about this year, the fact that was allowed to happen. Nobody said a word. Nobody tried to shut it down. Well, they maybe tried, but there was no shutting it down. And that connection to those players and Rian O'Neill and David Clifford and Shane Walsh and Comer and Murphy and them all, because you have to have that connection. That is what we live on. It's what the GA survives on. That they are us. They are the same as us. They live at the street at the end of the road. If you don't have that connection, and we've broken that a wee bit by taking them out of the club game so much. A lot of counties and a lot of the time, even Monahan County this year, players are now only playing championship. They don't play any club league football. They're not seen near their clubs for 6, 7, 8 months of the year. And if your championship is maybe knockout or only a couple of games, I guess that's very, very little airtime for a club, for its best players, and for the club scene for its best players. And we had, that was one of the things that's really in danger of breaking the connection to the general public. And I just think that those allowing for the Weans to get on the pitch after games and have all that, have that time with the players, and to be fair, I say it's for the players to give them that time and to be so gracious and stand and sign everything. I just thought that if you took anything out of this year, I think that's it.
Yeah, fully agree with that, Cahair. Fully agree. It was great to see the likes of Clifford and the boys just giving their time to the kids, and that's what it's all about. That's the grassroots for you, Cahair. But it was brilliant to see. But Carol Kane, that was an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by merrygoround.com and Atak.ie. Use the code JMac podcast to get 15% off merrygoround.com. Get the best skins, gloves, equipment on Atak.ie. Be attack-minded. Carol, thanks a million. Hope to see you soon. And you're a gentleman. Thanks very much.
Good man, John. Thank you. Enjoyed it. Cheers.